Good news, Christian. The waiting room is activated.
Woo!
Thank you, Heather. Very good.
Thank you, Heather.
Yeah,
And
we're learning all together, right?
Oh yeah.
That's awesome.
So Christian,
we-
or Regent, okay, so now you need to make us
And
all hosts, is that
I'm
right?
And then I'm working on getting everything else set up here.
Okay,
Yep.
cool. Awesome.
Can we need to have our presenters also as co-hosts, right?
Yeah, Gary and
We should let Gary and Evanette back in.
Very
Uh,
good.
okay.
There they are. I see him in the waiting room. I'll let him in.
Oh yeah, I made you the host on.
Yep, I see
Can I
that.
see the waiting room? I can't see the waiting room.
So
You'll be
There
able
we
to,
are.
Marjorie, as soon as
Oh.
she, yep.
I don't have host, right.
Dawn, I'm gonna take the host thing back from you just briefly while I get set up.
That's fine, yep.
Oh, actually, can you make me the host, please?
Yes, I
That would work. So Ivanette, welcome to our crazy Zoom.
Hi, everyone. Nice to be here.
You get the pleasure of being on our first session, so we have all those last minute panic attacks happening.
Sounds exciting, though. Go with the flow.
So Christian is the senior planner and the almighty in our regional development commission office. So he's been wonderful with me getting in eased in my job and my everything. Heather is the executive assistant. She's also another angel of our regional commission office. Dawn is in Region 5. She's also the senior planner and the community development planner, or how would you, director, community development director?
It's a regional development planner. I'm going to ask for my name to be changed for my next review.
She has many hats. She wears many hats there, and she's wonderful as well. And we're all in this, like High School Musical. We're all in this together. And then Gary, Mr. Gary, Mayor of St. James, who speaks Spanish, even though he says he doesn't.
I heard a little bit. Nice to meet you all.
You want me to go in the waiting room?
No,
Oh,
no, you're VIP.
On the bottom, it says 2 people enter the waiting room, see waiting room. Do I need to go in there or just stay here where I'm
well,
at?
those are just the people that are waiting to come into the meeting and we don't want to let them in quite yet.
Yeah, these are the VIPs.
Okay, Marjorie.
We're backstage.
I'll send Uber Eats with margaritas.
May I ask a question? Is there anyone else in the room that should be made a co-host?
Well, let me.
We've got Dawn, we've got Gary, we have Marjorie, Christian.
Anyone?
Fly.
Doing that, yeah.
Host
Okay, what was
privilege.
Is Ivanette host?
Not yet.
I can make her co-host.
Yes, because she's gonna share something.
And then that should be good. And then we have the capabilities of doing breakout rooms, correct?
Yes, yes. You should see that on the bottom of your screen. Breakout rooms.
I
Do
do
you see
not.
that, Dawn?
Mayor, question.
I do
Is
not have that.
Joe gonna do the presentation for you, or you're gonna do it yourself from there?
Yeah, I'm gonna do most of it right from here. Joe's gonna come in because as we get to the end of it for Uniting Cultures, he's on that, so he will help. But
Oh,
he's
okay.
at the appointment, but he should be here in the next 15 minutes, I think.
So he's going to join you at the office?
He's gonna go in his own office and he'll zoom in on you. I sent him the information yesterday.
So whenever he comes in, he should be made host as well,
Okay,
because he will co-present with Mayor.
correct.
Oh, there I see breakout rooms, Heather. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So how are we feeling? Are we good?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
We don't use Zoom. We use Teams mostly, so I'm not super familiar with Zoom. When I share slides, is it pretty easy to see that somewhere share?
Yeah, let me see if I can. Let me.
Everyone has the screen share ability that is set up. So on the bottom of the screen,
Okay,
if you just roll over, it should say screen share on the bottom.
Got
and
it.
it'll ask you what screen you want to share.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I made the mistake once of sharing everything, and I had like my timesheet and everything else.
W-2 forms, address.
Because
blood type.
I believe sharing is caring. So
Oh, Heather, I have one more. Well, no, never. Well, yes, I do have one more question. So after the panelists are done presenting, is there a way for us to pin both of them up there? So that they're both showing when there's questions with both?
there should be a way to pin. Let me see. Hold on a second.
We can pin two people though, because I didn't know if we can only pin one person.
Let me try it. Let me pin Ivan in, and let me pin add pin. Yes, we could. We can.
Okay, excellent, beautiful.
I am learning as we go.
How fancy we are, right?
My God.
On the fly.
So now you're pinned. Are you pinned? No.
I'm not seeing
Spotlight
it.
for everyone.
Maybe it's just for you. Oh, now I'm pinned. I'm seeing myself in the
View,
spotlight.
gallery view. There we go. Oh, we have to take it back to gallery view.
Okay.
Yes, this is a learning process. But so Ivanet and Gary, do you have any questions in terms of the participants or?
Just a question on the order.
Not that I know, not that I know of. Not that I can
Um,
think of.
I can share the agenda with you quick. I'll share that screen with you. So Marjorie and I will do a little bit of an introduction, and then Christian shares a little bit about why this topic is important. What this topic is important is what I have written here, though. That's dumb. And then we'll go into the panel. And so then Ivanette, you'll be first, and then Gary will go next. You each will have about 15, 20 minutes or so. Share a bit about who you are, what you do, why inclusion, diversity, and equity has been important to your role or to your community. And then we'll open it up to the participants for questions for about 20 minutes or so.
Don, can I ask a minor favor?
Absolutely.
Can you correct Proctor? It's with an E at the end, not an O. Yeah,
Surely.
thank you.
Yes,
Oh.
ma'am.
yeah, I noticed that.
Okay. So is that okay?
Yep.
And then you
sounds
guys
good.
are free to, you can log off, or if you want to stay and play the name game with us, or, feel free to, to join in if you'd like.
Thank you.
I am hoping that all the folks that connect are as upbeat as we are.
They will be. We'll get them jazzed.
There's no guarantee of this.
This is the first kind of training that we've done as a whole group like this. We've done, like, it maybe was a breakout session at a training, but it was never the focus of the training. So this will be new for a lot of these folks.
Yep. Don, you're pinned. Yeah. I
I'm
see a little
pinned?
pin. Yeah. I see a little pin on at the bottom left.
Oh, I can remove my spotlight.
So I can't be graded how bad I do because this is the first one, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, there's there's no measuring.
You
right
know
now.
way more than anybody else does about your topic.
You set the curve.
All right. Well, we got 2 minutes. Should we start letting people in? Are we comfortable and ready to mess with the world, or do we want to?
I want to test the music first. Hold on.
Okay.
I am going to. Can you hear, or do I have to share? Like,
You'll have to share the sound of your computer.
Oh, because I have it on YouTube. So
Yep. So you'll have. Oh, if you can't share your screen, I don't know
So
if
it
you
would
can share
be-
just music. I don't think you can. You can click share computer sound. Try that, Marjorie. Go to share screen, and at the bottom you can click that box that says share computer sound.
Okay, let's see.
Just
Yeah.
that alone will do it.
That was actually a concern that we had last night in the commission meeting, so you'll have to definitely
Oh,
click.
it'll
that.
definitely show the whole screen.
So let
Well,
me.
you can leave the video up if you want to, but I can't hear it still. There I can.
The reason why, and I am sharing this with stop share. The
I
reason
just
why I
wanted-
decided I decided to go with Imagine for Ivanet, Gary, and Heather is because of the obvious political climate that we're living. And this is hi Lou.
Morning. I was just gonna let you know that link on the email would not let me, I had to log into Zoom and join it that way.
Oh,
So there may be, it just comes up and says there's an error on the link. So if we're missing some people, that might be the,
So where did you have to get it from then?
I logged into Zoom, onto the Region 9 Zoom account, and I
Oh.
just
Yeah,
joined it there.
We have
Linda had
30
the same
people.
issue.
Heather
If you
could-
need, I can email out the link, but I need everyone's email addresses.
I can send that to you, Heather.
Thank you.
thank you, Lou.
You're welcome.
Lou is our financial director. And what other hats do you play at Region 9?
Can we start
Revolving
letting
Loan
people in?
Fund and the nonprofit.
And we have Ivane Bonilla, who's the director of communications for Procter & Gamble, and she's done an amazing job creating DEI content for the company, and she knows this very well. Ivane is from Puerto Rico, so.
Nope. Shoot, Heather, I'm sorry. We gotta let folks in, you guys. It's 9 o'clock.
Yeah, so we decided to go with Imagine because of the political climate instead of any other song that is thought-provoking in a more in-your-face way. Right now, we need to ease everyone in due to the political climate, and I think Imagine just that right now. So.
Hey, Gary, since, yeah, your signed minutes never got to us. So if it works for you, I would just come get, I will bring them tomorrow if that works for you.
Yeah.
I'll bring them over to your office tomorrow afternoon and get the signatures, and then I'll come back home and send them in to where I need to get them for the CARES Act money.
Okay.
Is that
Okay.
does tomorrow afternoon work for you?
Yeah, yeah.
So shall we?
Yes,
Okay, let me start sharing Imagine.
I'm sending Heather the link to the,
And let's start inviting people in. Let me see if I can see the play button here. Oh, there we are. I'm gonna play it from a few seconds so we can invite the people in and
Do you want me to let everybody in right now, all at
yeah,
once? Okay,
yeah.
I'll do it all.
Okay, and I did just send you the HSA information. I don't know if you had figured it out, since you had sent me that message yesterday, or was it this morning or whenever it was? Okay, yeah. Correct.
good morning, everyone.
Right. Yep, that's right.
Sees if you try, no hell below us.
Should all be singing with.
You sure can, Gary. We're just gonna give everyone a few more minutes to get logged in. We have most of the participants, but we'll just make sure that everyone else gets on.
Living for today. Imagine there's no countries. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for.
Carol,
And no religion too.
all right, folks. Well, why don't we get going? It's 9:03, and to be respectful of everyone's time, we'll get going. Marjorie, if we want to quiet the music. Hi, everybody. Good to see all of your faces this morning. Thank you so much for being here, being a part of this important work that we're doing within our communities and within our region. My name is Dawn Espy. I'm a regional development planner with Region 5 Development Commission. We've been working in the space of diversity, equity, and inclusion for a few years now, intentionally, with great intention. And I'm happy to be able to share some of those learnings with all of you over these next 4 sessions. So we've created these sessions to inspire and to create action around diversity, equity, and inclusion in our rural communities and in our region. My co-hosts Marjorie and Christian from Region 9, both planners there, will be familiar faces over these next 4 sessions. And when it became clear that we were going to be unable to host this in person as we wanted to and as we tried to several times, we switched gears to this online format and pulled together content that'll be interactive and hopefully engaging and relevant to your professional and personal growth. So please set an intention to attend all 4 of these sessions. They build off of one another, so as we move along, it'll get a little bit deeper into the topic. And please come also with an open and curious mind. I know that this topic isn't always a comfortable topic for everyone to talk about, but there's a quote that I really like by American author Neil Donald Walsh that says that life begins at the end of your comfort zone. And I am a firm believer in that. Once we get comfortable, I think we kind of stop learning. And so if we can push ourselves to come to this with an open mind and a curious mind, I think you'll get more out of the 4 sessions. I also do want to just take pause and recognize that what happened in our nation yesterday with the rioting at the Capitol and how that might make us all a little bit uneasy and maybe feeling a little bit different this morning than we did yesterday morning when we woke up. And so just to recognize that and be able to sit with that. And if you need to take a little bit of time away from the computer just to, process, please feel free to do that as we meet this morning. So I'm going to now turn it over to my co-host, Marjorie.
Good morning, everyone. I want to echo Dawn's words. These are very strange and difficult times that we're living, but I believe that the power of kindness and goodness and looking out for each other is what is going to get us through these times. And the proof of this is that we're all in this session together, making sure that we are providing for all. So on behalf of what I represent, which is the BIPOC community, I thank you all for being here. And I appreciate you taking out of your time that could be invested in something else to really invest in this learning, and that will translate investing in your communities. So back to our program, because as we say in show business, show must go on. Sessions will consist of guest speakers, panelists, small group activities, and intercultural development inventory, and development of action steps for our RDOs and for Develop MN. Before we hear from Christian about why this topic is very important for us planners in economic and community development, I will share some housekeeping items. Please stay on mute whenever possible to reduce the amount of background noise during presenters and panelists discussions. Utilize the chat box as much as possible for questions and comments. The hosts, Dawn, Christian, and I, as well as Heather, if she stays with us as host, gracious host, will be monitoring the chat during all 4 sessions. We will have break built into the sessions. So we ask that you remain present and engaged as you are able. And now I introduce you to my colleague, and he has become some sort of mentor for all of us that come into Region 9, Christian Brecken from Region 9 Development Commission, and he is going to share with all of us why this work is so important for economic and community development.
Thank you, Dawn, and thank you, Marjorie, and thanks for everyone for joining us. I'm going to share my screen here, and I will make some comments. Dawn and Marjorie asked me to talk to all of you about why we as economic development planners, as community development planners, as other staff in our respective organizations should care about this issue. So these are my opinions, may not reflect Region 9 or Dawn or Marjorie, but they trusted me with this task, and I'll keep it relatively brief, and then we will turn it over to our panelists. So I believe I am sharing at this point, and I will position this as economic development issue. And for many of you, that's probably a new way of thinking of diversity, equity, inclusion. I am by no stretch of the imagination an expert on this topic. I am an economic development planner, and but I have a lot of thoughts about why this is important. If we were to believe the Department of Employment and Economic Development in Minnesota, we will be facing major challenges over the next decade to fill jobs across a variety of industries. Even though Minnesota has a relatively high labor force participation rate, the state is experiencing significant talent shortages, and they will continue over the next decade. By next year, we will need 3.2 million workers. We are on track to have 2.9 million workers over the age of 16, which will make us come up about 239,000 workers short. Even during COVID, it indicates that we at any given time over the last year had between 50 and 100,000 unfulfilled positions. These are pretty staggering numbers because they're going to be very difficult for us to fill by 2022, which is the projection coming from DEED. The cost of a 10% labor shortage, which is lower than what DEED says we experience in South Central Minnesota, create very, very high numbers in terms of lost output, job creation, and earnings. Using RIMS-2 analysis, which is a common tool from the Bureau of Economic Analysis, we looked at what would that 10% labor shortage in Region 9 across the top 20 industries cost us. In terms of economic output, this is the equivalent of $1.7 billion. It's the equivalent of 132,000 jobs, which is identical to our current workforce. Of course, some of those jobs will not be in Region 9, they will be across the state and in neighboring states. But in terms of earnings to our tax base in Region 9, this is $500 million. So accordingly, we need every able body to be part of our economic development efforts, regardless of gender, age, ethnicity, or other characteristics unique to the individual. So what are we doing here today? We are seeking to connect our community development efforts with the more rigid language of economic development. And we hope that you as our partners from across the state will help us develop more sound and inclusive economic development strategies in your areas to keep Minnesota moving forward as welcoming, prosperous, and fair. Economic development may be something we consider a 20th century development, but it's really just another word for survival. Human history is for the most part defined by our ability to acquire materials needed to survive. One could argue that human history is a class project in economic development, a project without an end date and with uncertainties and change lurking around every corner. Facing the unknowns, we do what we do best. We hoard. Psychologists argue that the ability to hoard is one that is as ingrained in us as is in squirrels collecting nuts as the days get shorter. More is always better, and safety is secured by ensuring excess supplies. Traditional economic development frameworks are very much influenced by this mentality. We learn to be industrious, and economic growth and the accumulation of wealth has ensured higher life expectancies and standards of living than ever before. In economic theory, we therefore talk about hoarding as a necessary psychological response to uncertainty. In other words, it is a fear-based way to deal with potential scarcity in the future. Our ancestors' prehistoric hoarding to survive is so ingrained in us that our fears go very much unnoticed until it triggers certain behaviors that are detrimental to our well-being. If you don't believe me, think of the following situation taking place last year. Walmart reports that 2 items were hoarded more than any other items in their stores during 2020: toilet paper and fishing rods. Apparently, in an advanced and wealthy culture, we return to certain basics for safety and comfort during times of uncertainty. Why these 2 items? That's difficult to understand. It is a remarkable paradox. At the pinnacle of human material and technical achievement, we find ourselves anxiety-ridden, prone to depression, scared of those that are different than us, driven to consume while working long hours to the detriment of our physical and mental health. We, meaning the United States, consume half of the world's antidepressants while making up 4% of the world's population. Most of us wish we could eat less rather than more, and we have more citizens behind bars than all of the European countries combined, Russia included. In fact, 1 in 4 prisoners in the world are locked up in United States prisons. 25 of our states, so half of our states, have more prisoners than any other nation in the world. This triggers a question of whether the traditional definition of economic growth has outplayed its role. Economic growth, for so long the great engine of progress, appears to struggle to make our lives better. If you look at the relationship between the 20 wealthiest nations in the world as it pertains to gross domestic product per capita and quality of life as measured by an index of various health and social well-being variables listed there on that slide, there's virtually no relationship between increases in GDP per capita and health and social problems once we get above a certain threshold. On the flip side, when we look at how wealth is distributed within each country, a strong relationship emerges. It appears as equality is strongly correlated with decreased health and social problems. In other words, once we have reached a certain level of wealth, it is not really about wealth anymore. It is about wealth distribution. And these relationships exist for individual variables as well. If we look at income inequality and trust in society, at the state level, or then looking at some of the key indicators of how we are doing with, for instance, race, we have a very uneven distribution of wealth in this nation. In the largest cities in this country, African American unemployment is 30 to 35%. I put down 6 to 10% to account for COVID unemployment. That's for all groups. African Americans and Latinos, 3 times more likely to live in poverty than whites. Net worth, African Americans, 10 cents per dollar of whites, Latinos, 12 cents. African American women, $100 in median net wealth. Latino women, $120 in median net wealth. This is nationwide. For white women, it's $41,500. So we have very large inequalities, which, according to these statistics, will impact our quality of life. You see the same thing if you start looking at things like income inequality and women's status, income inequality and infant deaths, income inequality and teenage birth rates. This is at the state level. Income inequality and imprisonment, income inequality and overweight children, homicides, gender equality. So if you're not convinced that inequalities really exist, reflect on some of those numbers. So what does this have to do with Minnesota? Aren't we fairly prosperous and egalitarian? Minnesota is well ahead of the national average with respect to per capita money income. We come in at about 111% of the national average, so 11 percentage points at the aggregate level. But if you break this down a little bit further, using data from November 2020, 17 of our 87 counties scored higher than 100. 9 of them were above the average, which means 78 were below the state average. But 70 of our 87 counties have a lower income, average income than the national average. So we live in an extremely skewed state where we do well as a state, but where the great majority of our counties are significantly below not only the Minnesota average, but also below the national average. Some of this we can identify by looking at workforce investment areas. If you look at, there's a top tier there with the city of Minneapolis, Hennepin, Carver, Ramsey County. These workforce investment areas are relatively high average monthly earnings. Then you have a second tier, and then you have a third tier. These are pretty significant differences in terms of how we make a living and how much we are compensated for the work we do throughout the state. So looking at counties is the first way, in my opinion, to start identifying inequalities that exist within the state. Here's an example from South Central, which is identical to Region 9. We are also seeing some structural changes. Manufacturing has been the predominant industry, the largest employer in Region 9. This time next year, it will be healthcare. Healthcare is that yellow line near the bottom. It's the second lowest paid industry in Region 9 among the top 10. When that one surpasses manufacturing next year, we are decreasing the average pay by $1,200 per worker employed in that industry. So we are not only seeing changes between counties, but we're also seeing changes between industries. If you start looking at some of the demographics, certain groups are not enjoying the relatively high standards of living that we are enjoying at the aggregate level. The state is doing very well on average. We are below the national average of 15% of people living in poverty at roughly 10%. We are below the national average on families living in poverty, 7% versus 11%. But if you break it down by categories, demographic categories, the number jumps to 34% for African Americans, 22% for Hispanics and Latinos. And if you break it down even further, and I believe Region 9 is a relatively prosperous region. We have had a relatively strong manufacturing industry where we've had a significant amount of employment of people of color. But in some of our counties, we are seeing between 80 and 90% poverty rates among African Americans. One example would be our county of Le Sueur, one of our most prosperous and one of 3 counties in Region 9. We have 9 counties. It's one of the 3 counties that's actually growing in population. Poverty rates among African Americans in this county is 89%. Another group facing major challenges with respect to socioeconomic conditions in Minnesota are individuals living with mental illness. Research indicates that the persons in Minnesota experiencing long-term homelessness, nearly 59% have a mental illness, a condition impacting hundreds and thousands of Minnesotans in various forms. A thriving economy is dependent upon having a workforce that reflects care and opportunities for those suffering from these conditions. Research from the CDC suggests that anxiety and depression alone more than doubles the population standing outside the workforce nationally. And Minnesota is certainly not protected against an epidemic of mental health and substance abuse challenges in the modern economy. Region 9 is frequently presented with pleas to assist with what is described as an ongoing mental health crisis in rural Minnesota. Although rural communities make up only 25% of the population, they account for 90% of the state's total land area, which means we on average are further removed from each other and from resources that assist with mental health challenges. Typically, people in rural communities are older and in poorer health than those in urban centers, amplifying the effects of substance abuse and mental health problems. Minnesota's counties report increasing percentages of populations admitted to treatment for alcohol and substance abuse. But those numbers are only come from those who were actually involved in treatment. So we can reason that an even larger percentage of people struggle with the same alcohol and substance abuse without having gone to treatment, as most regions outside the Twin Cities are considered healthcare provider shortage areas for mental health conditions. In fact, outside the Twin Cities, 95% of our counties are considered shortage areas for mental health conditions. In Minnesota, approximate travel time to a mental health or chemical dependency provider for someone living in a rural zip code is 77 minutes. For those in urban zip codes, it's 24 minutes. This workshop today provides us with an opportunity to rethink some of our existing ideas of what meaningful economic development represents. Is economic growth the only outcome we are interested in? Or are we seeking to grow prosperous together as a state in ways that reduce the health and social problems that prevail? If so, how do we address our local challenges? Your regions are diverse, whether it be through migration, lack of support services for particular groups, or increasing pressures on the existing tax base due to an older population drawing more in transfer payments than what is generated through wages and salaries. Diversity needs to be addressed as an opportunity to rejuvenate our counties, cities, and townships. Today, we will hear from two great speakers on representing different communities and organizations that address the need for diversity, equity, and inclusion in economic development efforts. It is our hope that we can collectively work to champion a more useful and impactful economic development framework for MADO as we move forward, one through which all our neighbors feel welcome and can participate in this ongoing project of maintaining not only high standards of living, but also fostering a good quality of life. Thank you for your time, and I will pass it on to my good friend Marjorie.
Thank you, Christian. We will have a small break after all the presentations for your question and answer. So we suggest that you're taking notes of all the presentations so we can address them better through the chat. And if we see that it's we're able, because we are right now 48 participants in this meeting. So if we're able, we're gonna open up for you guys to make the questions directly, but please use the chat room as your question method. With that, I want to introduce you a very special person, very special to me because she's a role model for us BIPOC women all over the world. She's conquered the corporate world directly from, well, right now she's in Ohio, but she's from Puerto Rico. I have to say that. I'm very proud Puerto Rican. She's the director of communications of Procter & Gamble, Ivanet Bonilla.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Marjorie. Can you guys hear me? Yeah, perfect. Yeah, so as Marjorie was saying, I am communications director at Procter & Gamble. I have the privilege of working in this space, and it's so fulfilling to be able to do that. I specifically work in the femcare business with the Always brand. So I'll share a little bit more about what I do. I'm going to share my screen. 1 second. Let me know when you can see. Yep, perfect. Awesome. All right, so at Procter & Gamble, this equality and inclusion is super important. It's part of the way we do business. It's a critical part. And we might think, why? So why equality and inclusion? The reality is it's not only the right thing to do, but at the end of the day, it does build organizations, it builds businesses, economies, and communities. There's also a lot of different terms. Through the years, we've said diversity and inclusion, equality and inclusion, equity, all these different terms. So I wanted to take a moment to talk a bit about them and the significance that each has. So when we think of equality, equality is the experience of being equal, particularly in status, in rights, and opportunity. When we think of inclusion, it's the feeling of belonging, having the space and the support to be our unique selves and to be embraced for our uniqueness and the fullness of our humanity. And the reality is each of us wants to be, wants a superior and equitable and inclusive experience wherever we work and wherever we live. That really and truly enables us to be our best and to give our best in everything that we do, whether it's at work, in our community, in our schools, wherever we might be. So in order to achieve true equality and inclusion, The reality is there's two prerequisites to that, and that is diversity and equity. Okay, so we can't get to equality and inclusion without these two things. So when we think of diversity, diversity is an essential need and expectation. It's critical for us to reflect the people that we serve. It's what enables us to fully and deeply understand people's needs. The diversity of thinking, the diversity of perspectives really drives innovation in anything we do, whether it's corporate, community, government, etc. Diversity creates more holistic solutions, better and faster problem solving as well. Equity, distinct from equality, it's a requirement for us to create fair access and opportunity for everyone. It's being intentional in how we staff and who we staff in roles, ensuring opportunity that thoughtfully develops and challenges all. If we let our default take over, as people, as humans, right? We staff people around us who look like us or act like us, but many times we need to push through that and also prioritize diversity so we can get to the equity that we need as well. And that at the end of the day too, we all play a vital role in achieving equality and developing the tools like this training today, the mindset, and working together to reach a higher standard. We have to address the inequities that exist today, and achieving equity will require all of us working together to achieve that end goal. And I honestly have to do this across sectors, public, private, we're all in this world together, we're all in this country together. So we all have a role to play, and we need to step up to do that. So from a corporate standpoint, I'll just share a little bit about how we think about it at P&G and give you some examples as well. Hopefully that'll inspire anyone. And so wanted to share from a Procter & Gamble standpoint, our equality and inclusion aspiration is we aspire to create a company and a world where equality and inclusion is achievable for all, where respect and inclusion are the cornerstones of our culture, where equal access and opportunity to learn, grow, succeed, and thrive are available to everyone. So this is what we strive for. This is a journey, and everyone's in different stages of the journey. But at the end of the day, we do want to create an environment both inside and outside of our organization that promotes respect and inclusivity, and that helps to ensure that there is equal access and opportunity for people to learn, to grow, and thrive. When we think of equality and inclusion, we have a strategy that has 4 different pillars, and obviously this will look differently depending on your organization. But the common thread here is that the E&I strategy needs to be holistic and integrated into everything that we do in order for us to achieve meaningful impact. So for us, we've defined these 4 pillars that you see here, with the employees being at the center. With our brands also, the voices and reach of our brands driving change, the partnerships, that we enter in, partnership commitments that help to build access and opportunity for marginalized people, and then also deep and impactful reach into the communities that we live and work in. So when we think of our employees, we want to make sure that we create a culture where people can show up being themselves, right? Whoever they are and wherever they come from, and feeling safe to do so. We want to, leverage our brands and the voices that our brands have to serve people in an inclusive way, bringing visibility to the uniqueness of people's humanity. Everyone is different, and we want to shine a light on how beautiful that is through our brands and company voice. We want to build equality and inclusion into the key areas of our supply and value ecosystem as well, by expanding opportunity and partnering on this critical priority. With that, we believe we can accelerate growth of human beings and business. And then we also want to commit to diversity, equality, equity, and inclusivity to identify gaps that create inequity, and to develop strategies that can help change experiences, lives, and at the end of the day, whole communities. So when we expand opportunity, we can accelerate growth, and we can do this together. So recently, as a company, we relaunched our citizenship effort. You might have seen it. It's called Lead with Love. And we're committed to continuing to doing acts of good through our, you know, brands and through our company efforts to make sure that we continue to make impact in our communities, and lift people up. So from a brand standpoint, so the second pillar that you see there, wanted to share a little bit of an example of how this comes to life through the brand I work on, which is Always. So for Always, just to kind of ground you on what our priority is, our social impact mission, so the work that we do to help our society, is really anchored on ensuring that girls don't lose confidence at puberty because of their gender or their period. So we've learned that more than 50% of girls experience a sharp drop in confidence at puberty, with their first periods marking the lowest point in their teenage years. There's obviously many factors to that statistic, but in many cases, when you look at that moment in time, obviously at puberty, there's so many things that are happening, physically, mentally, emotionally, socially, but you know, getting your period is a very, you know, big moment. And if you don't have the right information, the right education, the right access to the products needed, you can imagine that the impact that can have in your life is a long-term one. So how do we try to address those things? Is we have 3 pillars that we activate our social impact mission through, which includes tackling societal barriers to girls' confidence, whether it's challenging gender norms or gender stereotypes. For example, a few years ago, we had a campaign called Like a Girl. And so we challenged what it meant to do things like a girl. So people would think like, oh, you hit like a girl, which, you know, meant something negative. And we were like, well, why does that mean something negative? You know, she can hit the ball as hard as anyone else can. And also tackling barriers associated to the stigma that still surrounds periods to this day in 2021. We have our puberty and confidence education, as I was saying, you know, lack of awareness of the changes that, you know, girls are going through at that stage in life is also a big problem. And so through our education tools and materials, we partner with schools, teachers, parents, to make sure that, you know, the people that are surrounding girls have the right information to enable and empower them to be able to have the knowledge they need to remain confident through this moment in time and thrive. And then the third bucket is access to period products and making sure that, you know, girls around the world have access to the period products to be able to manage their periods with confidence. And so as we think of these 3 pillars, I wanted to double click on an example that is connected to the impact that this has on the economies and communities. So globally, there are many barriers to girls' education, with periods and period barriers being one of them. And the reality is that when we help girls, you know, manage their periods and tackle those barriers, we can actually impact, you know, the economy and help, you know, everyone kind of thrive and the economies thrive. So one of the issues with periods is like, obviously the stigma still associated with it. Sometimes, you know, girls around the world are missing school because they just don't want to, you know, it's a taboo, it's a stigma. Or, you know, the reality too is that they don't have the products they need. So, you know, this happens all over the world. It obviously, you know, you would assume it happens in countries like Africa and India, and it does at a very high level. But this is happening here in the US as well. So we learned a few years ago that nearly 1 in 5 girls have missed school here in the US because they don't have period products. And so you can imagine that this has the impact that this has on a long term when they're missing, you know, a couple of days of school every month because they don't have period products. And so, you know, we've seen and heard stories all over the country of girls being impacted by this, and sometimes even being in truancy because they've missed so many days of school because of this issue. So this is why we've made it one of our efforts to work. We work with charity partners, you know, government, et cetera, to continue to raise awareness of this issue and try to come up with a solution, because, you know, honestly, it's a natural thing that girls go through, and they're being affected by this. So from a gender equality standpoint, it's really holding girls back and holding, you know, the economy back, right? The World Bank, and this is some statistics that they've shared, you know, in terms of the impact that investing in girls' education can have for communities. As you can see there, an extra year of primary education beyond the mean, increases the girls' eventual wage rates by an average of 10 to 20%. And then an increase of just 1% in the share of women with secondary education can increase a country's annual per capita by 0.3%. So, investing in girls' education is investing in our communities and our economies overall. So wanted to share this just as an example of, how this work of equality and inclusion and social impact can come to life through a corporation or a brand, for example. And we do, like I said, we do this work working across sectors. So we work with Feeding America for our donations, and especially now with COVID, increase in need has gone up, and so we work across sectors to help tackle this barrier to girls' education. So I just wanted to share some thoughts on the impact that equality and inclusion can have on economies and communities. The reality is that economies can reach their full potential only with the full participation of all citizens. So all of them, not just men or women. This is like men, women, and everyone else. However you want to identify yourselves, no matter your background, your race, your ethnicity, it's everyone, basically. When people have an equal shot, they have the equal opportunity to thrive, and their communities will thrive too. And one of the things that we've learned, and I've learned, is also being a passive supporter of equality is not enough. But when good intentions turn into tangible actions, both big and small, every little bit helps. Change can occur at a larger scale. So to kind of close out, I wanted to share some considerations, and this is a mix of my experience, my thoughts on this topic. It's not an easy subject; it's complex. It was said at the beginning. We need to do a lot of learning. We have to listen. We have to educate ourselves. Our experiences are very different depending on where you come from, what you look like. So it's really important to take the time to read, listen, watch, learn. And that includes this training, for example, and other trainings. In P&G, we've had a lot of training as well of understanding, different aspects, whether it's the LGBT community, whether it's the African American, the Latino community, et cetera. We just really need to take the time to listen to each other, to watch, learn. And then once we learn these things, once we learn of these inequalities that are, occurring around us, we need to raise awareness of them. And so, for example, in the example I had of always, like, we need to continue to raise awareness of the issue that girls are missing school because they don't have period products. Like, that's just crazy that that's happening, in 2021 in the US. And so the other thing is developing a holistic and intentional strategy. So I think in the past, it was like, in general, yeah, we value diversity and inclusion. It's like, yeah, we believe in that. But like, if it's not integrated into your overall strategy as an organization and in everything you do, both internally and externally, and it's not holistic, it won't work. It won't really move the needle. It won't make a difference. So it's important that it's holistic and intentional. And then also leveraging the voice of your organization and your business. So for example, in our case, it's like we leverage the voice of the company, our brands, and our people to make this happen. So it's a similar thing. Like once you know and you organize yourself, and you're like, it's using the voice to make change and drive change. Also, accurate representation, both internally and externally, matters. And so I think in the past, also, it was this misconception of like, oh, in our case, for example, in an advertisement, oh, because you have an African American in the ad, then yes, check the box, it's diverse. No, that doesn't work that way. It has to be accurate representation. How these people are portrayed, it has to be authentic. It can't be a check the box, for example. And so recently, just to share an external example, there was a pajama company that had, all the families in the Christmas pajamas, right? And so all the, you saw all the families, and there was an African-American family that was just the mom and the kids. And obviously that caused a lot of swirl because it was like super stereotyping, the African-American family and community. So it's really important that we not just representation, but accurate representation matters. Partnerships, as I mentioned, that's important, driving partnerships, to drive D&I. So also it's holding ourselves accountable. Are we partnering, are we supporting minority, businesses, and are we helping them thrive and lifting them up so that we can all lift, communities up. Taking meaningful action. So not just talking won't do good. It's actually acting on it, and taking meaningful actions that help drive change. And accountability, once you set those goals and those plans and strategy, it's like continuing to track and monitor, so that we can really move the needle on things. Start with small steps. Like I said, this is it's a really complex subject. It's kind of daunting when you think of all the different things to consider, all the different backgrounds people have, experience, etc., all the intersections that people have as humans. But start with small steps, and we're all in the journey, and we're on it together. And it doesn't matter where you are on the journey if you just start the journey. So that's what I had. I want to thank you so much for having me. And I really applaud you for taking the time to talk about such an important topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Annette. This was very insightful. And for those who work in DEI and have already done this community work, community development work, we are going to see a lot of terms that we kind of relate to each other. We use a lot of them. Later on in this session, we'll provide you a small list, a small glossary of words that you can use for this work. But this is not a one-time deal. This is an ongoing process of learning, as Ivana mentioned. And there is not one whole manual on how to approach diversity, equity, and inclusion. So this is just a beginning step on our learning process. But we will hear a lot of commonalities and a lot of terms that are used often. We heard an approach from a big corporation, but now for our next panelist, we have someone in local government who knows very well how to both work with diversity, equity, and inclusion, and speak Spanish, although he denies it. And he is also a small business owner. So I want to introduce you all to Gary Sturm, the mayor of St. James.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for your generosity in allowing me to visit with everyone about ending racism. Joe McCabe, our former city manager, is also on, and he will address a little more regarding our uniting cultures. We were ahead of quite a few years as Tony Downs Foods, food processing, started here in the 60s and 70s. So we're a couple decades ahead of what's of this awareness coming out. We're fortunate to do that. We enjoy about a 38 to 40% multicultural diversity in St. James. And I sincerely 100% mean that. We enjoy that. It's great. I'm going to back up to 1997. I'll make this short. There was some gang fights, wannabe gang members in 1997, where it was mostly Hispanics against Hispanics. They had baseball bats and they would bust windshields and slice tires of cars. Obviously, we could not put up with that. We needed a direction. We needed to fix this. We needed to do something to go forward to correct it. So we met with, we called a meeting to get business leaders, industry, schools, attorneys, our judges, city and county officials, the law enforcement, human services. We all gathered together at a restaurant and had a meeting for an hour or two cooperatively and say, look, how do we address this? Let's go forward. We need to fix this. Then we went out to try and gather ideas. Then the city met individually with each of them, the law enforcement, the ministerial association, the attorneys, everyone, to try and get their ideas and their thoughts to try and compress together as to how we need to go forward. We also asked some of our Hispanic acquaintances to come to it. Back in 1997, some of the Hispanics didn't want to join, for whatever reason. I'm sure because there's one in G, they're going to ask them a bunch of difficult questions that they may not want to answer or be able to. And in visiting with the Hispanic clergy, they said, you know, and remember now, this is 20 some years ago, they said, you know, in the Hispanic culture, if some of the Hispanic folks come up and visit with you, sometimes the other Hispanics will get jealous or just say, what are you doing? You know, don't be trying to, you know, we're in our own group. We don't think you're going to help us. And they were. So we also took that into consideration, do the best we could to add more people to it. We have ESL for Family Literacy Program. The Hispanic ministers, another thing they brought up is that, you know, some of the retail stores in St. James, the folks, our friends have brought up to us that they're being racist. There's racism when we come into some of the stores. We obviously, through the chamber and through the city and everything, went out and visited to say, look here, we're all, last time I checked, we're all created equal. So let's go forward here because we are all equal. Like I say, this started back in the 70s with the Hispanics would migrate and come here and leave in the winter. We're on our like second or third generation of the Hispanic families that are here, and we have one on a school board. Saudi Showalter is on our Park and Rec board. They're really coming out to know and realize and believe that we are sincere and we all want to make the world better today, and our not just our community, but the world better today than it was yesterday, better tomorrow than it is today. So out of that came a Unidad group that, but looking back, our shortfall was we were very challenged to get any of the Hispanic culture folks to join that, but we did our best to work on it through the years. So out of that, we did an 18 or 20 page solution. The conclusions, I'll read you. We had 11 conclusions, and that was for new employee orientations for businesses and for our employers, create liaison positions, teach ESL, which we are, extol success from our community, not failures, and make sure our government leaders want to create partnerships with everyone. Remain tough on crime, but don't expect law enforcement to do everything to fix a problem. So we get all of our law enforcement, human services, courts, attorneys together and exchange information. We do, excuse me, community-oriented police patrol. They get out of the car, he or she. We've had a Hispanic police officer through the years as well. Get out, do bike patrol, go out and visit with everyone, say hello, conduct research to really give what the economic value of the jobs that we have in St. James that they do, how important that is to our community, to our school, to our businesses, to everything. And mostly, lastly, go out to your neighbors. Like I say, we enjoy a 38 to 40% Hispanic multicultural diversity. Go over to your neighbors. We have some elderly demographics in St. James, and sometimes you'll see the racism. You know, they don't embrace it as we all should. There's racism, some racism in all of us. We need to get rid of that. We need to remember we're all equal. So smile, say hello, walk over to the neighbors, ask what they're doing. I used to have, and not for at least 10 or 15 years, people come on, those people are talking to me. You're out there and I don't understand they're talking about me. I said, they're probably talking about the weather, what they did over the weekend. They're not just talking about you. You need to get past that. You need to, that's not the truth. So we'll fast forward to 2017, 20 years later, we continue to work on it. So with the help of assistance of Region 9, YWCA, Blandon, Blue Cross, and Greater Mankato Diversity Council, we had a forum on races in 2017 at the Presbyterian Church. We had over 100 people, excuse me, 75 to 100 people come to that, which was a start of really working on this diligently going forward. I think the other communities also did that with St. Peter, Fairmont, Waseca, St. James. Out of that now came uniting cultures. Joe will talk about that more as they meet monthly and address some of the multicultural issues. We have a multicultural fiesta. We had our third annual. We started at probably 700-800 people, and we had close to 2,000 on the one a year ago. We continued to want to do that, to address that. In 2002, the United Cultures made this book about all of the heritages that we have. It's your story, my story, our story. It's about all races. It's whether you're German, Irish, Norwegian, Swede, Hispanic, whatever you are. It's a story about all of their heritage. Protect your heritage. When we have our multicultural fiesta, we don't just have Mexican food. We have German and Irish and Norwegian and Swede and lutefisk, you name it. They'll have that there because we want to enjoy and embrace all diversities. A story that was close, a gal by the name of Jocelyn called me a couple of years ago that they lived in Madelia. She originally from Honduras, born in 1996, moved to Minnesota, to Madelia in 2002. 2003, excuse me, in 2008, the ICE came around her house and knocked on the door and took her mom and dad away. And her and her two sisters, she was 6 years old, went over to their aunts to try and take care of them, and they adopted them, because all of the girls, so that they didn't have to go back deported to the Honduras. Anyhow, so I showed her, she called and said, "Can I look at this house?" I said, "Sure, I sell real estate." So when she came over, I added 3 or 4 more on. And so she looked, and I said, "Here, I added some more in your price range, what you're looking for." And so she's very gracious. Her mom was along and her sister. We showed 4 houses. So before we left, she said, "You know, I just want to thank you for showing us. We asked for 1 house, and you didn't just show us that, you showed us other stuff that's available. I just want you to know how much I sincerely appreciate that." I said, "That's my job. That's what we're supposed to be. We want to treat everyone fairly, equally, again, equally. And that's what I'm supposed to do now. I'm not trying to pat myself on the back at all. All I'm saying is we need to get more people to open up their minds to our racial inequity to be equity." And the Jocelyn, so I read this, we went through this book, Your Story, and I read it. Jocelyn's in there. So I talked to her, I said, "Jocelyn, I didn't know this is what happened. You at 6 years old, you know, ICE came to your door, took your parents away and everything." She said, "Well, I didn't know you were married either." I said, "Well, it's a small world," but she was she's the most gracious gal I've ever met, and speaks from the heart. So today we are having our Uniting Cultures. We have a group of Hispanic folks and Caucasians, everybody all together to see what we can do and embrace going forward. We had a peaceful protest, you know, with Black Lives Matter last year. There's over 100 and some plus people to that. Very good turnout, excellent job. Nicole was there as well, and she came to the Multicultural Fiesta as well from Region 9. So
And Mr. Mayor, I think it's worth noting too that the high schoolers organized it. So I think that was what made it really special.
Yep. A neat deal. So lastly, before I turn over to Joe, a couple things. Look approachable, be approachable, and smile. That's what the world is all about. We'd be a better world with that. Now, easier said than done, but we need to go forward. Also, Marjorie was along, and Nicole, when we came in and looked through the Plaza D. St. James, Downs Foods, who has more than a 50% Hispanic workforce, gave the land for $1 to the city. So from that, we have the Plaza D. St. James. You can go out, you can have your goods, you can go out there and visit, you can go out and shoot the breeze. Also through the Art Place grant, we got a grant for Bicycle Roll. So it's a bicycle motorized that people can use, take out and use. They don't have to pay any rent, just use it and show their wares or sell them to anybody that they want. We need to adapt, and we've got a long ways to go. We've made some inroads, no question. We still have a long ways to go, as everybody does, but the sooner we realize this, not necessarily realize this, but the sooner that we realize that this is for real, we need to not have racism, not condone it, and stop somebody if they are saying it, that this is not right. This is not America. America is that we're all created equal. So lastly, before I turn over to Joe, one thing I'd like to say to embrace this change. If it is to be, it is up to me. Just remember that. It isn't up to someone else. It isn't up to you or the next person or anything to do with it. It's up to us. It's up to me. So look all in the mirror and say, it's up to me. If it is to be, it is up to me. Joe.
Thank you, Mayor. Before we go with Joe, I would like Ivanet, if possible, to answer some questions that we have in the, Ivanet has to excuse herself to hop onto another meeting, so we'll address real quick the questions. Dawn, do you have them?
I do,
in hand?
yes. Yeah, sorry, Joe and Gary, we just had a little quick switch of schedules. So yeah, we did have a couple of participant questions from Ivanet, or for Ivanet. Cheryl, do you want to propose your question?
Go ahead, Dawn. I'd have to
Okay,
scroll back up. Thank you.
Okay, I'll do it. So Cheryl was wondering, who do you engage to determine the Procter & Gamble campaigns? How do you get input for what will be an effective campaign?
Yeah, so so campaigns at P&G are honestly at the end of everything's kind of connected to the consumer and what is the consumer's needs, and how we can help those, whether it's using our brand voice or using our company voice. So we do a lot of consumer research, and we talk to a lot of our consumers and work with a lot of the partners that serve these consumers as well, to design what the best, campaigns are going to be, whether it's related to tackling racial injustice and developing a campaign like we did with The Choice, for example, or, helping champion Hispanic Americans, and stepping up, for them at a time where they've been disproportionately affected by COVID with the campaign that we did with Estamos Unidos. Those were corporate campaigns. But then also from a brand standpoint, as I mentioned, like depending on your brand focus and what you're trying to achieve, then based on the needs and the situations of our consumers, then we design the campaigns to best address those. Like I mentioned with the End Period Poverty campaign, it's, raising awareness, but doing something about it. And so that's how we try to tackle it based on our mission and our goals. And then how can we meet those, those needs in the best way possible, whether it's a marketing campaign, and a charity partner, et cetera. So it's really a combination of, being in touch of our consumers' needs, but also being clear on what our mission and goals are as a brand and as a company.
And then one follow-up question to that is, how do you then evaluate success of these campaigns? How do you know that it's made a difference?
Yeah, so one of the things that we do is we love to track, monitor. We're all about numbers. We're obsessed with numbers, statistics, and stuff like that. So we do a lot of surveys and post surveys and track impact, products donated or people helped, or, we do this, every year. And we track that. And actually, separately, I can send a link to our citizenship report where you can see the holistic view of everything we do globally, as well as in the US. But then, that's from a citizenship and campaign standpoint. From a purchasing standpoint, we also have a very robust diversity purchasing effort. Our supplier diversity, effort has some very concrete goals, which we also track and monitor consistently. And those are shared externally. So I'm happy to share those as well.
Great. Do you have time for 2 more questions?
Sure.
Okay. This is from Rosemary. She's wondering, how is equity and equality incorporated into product development?
Yeah, I think that's connected to just making sure that we're in touch with what our consumers' needs are and understanding where they live, how they use our products, what's their situation. We spend actually a lot of time with consumers at consumers' homes. Obviously not now with COVID, but normally we do a lot of research, whether it's in facilities, but also in homes, because it's not until you really understand how people live and interact with the product that you're going to really know how to better help them and what product needs, we can design to better meet those needs. So it's really based, again, on consumer research and understanding and being in touch with what their needs are and how can we better, serve them.
And then one final question from Rosemary, just wondering about, are there cultural obstacles when marketing and providing products such as the Always brand?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's cultural obstacles, but also socioeconomic, things that we need to consider when marketing and providing products. So, for example, from a fabric detergent standpoint, in countries like India, we need to sell our product in like little sachets because people just don't have the ability to buy big boxes of, detergent, for example. So again, just making sure that we're in touch with how our consumers buy products, what are the limitations that they have from a socioeconomic, but also just like the infrastructure, right, that they have and what they use and how they use our products. And then again, from a marketing standpoint, like is the best way to reach them through, for example, phone. So everyone has a phone around the world, that could be the most effective. So TV might not be the most effective all over the world. And so we try to tailor those marketing efforts as well to where the consumers are and where are they the most receptive. And sometimes it has to be innovative ways like, phone or digital, etc. So again, it's really making sure that you're clear on where the consumer is and where they're the most receptive in order to really tailor those messages for them.
Well, thank you.
Awesome.
Margie,
Thank
I'll
you
turn it back.
again. Thank you again for having me. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Take care.
Thank you, Annette, for everything. And if we have to take few things from your presentation, one of them is that we need to know our communities in order to better serve them. So I sure appreciate your presentation and everything, and becoming such an inspiration for all of us.
Thank you so much. Take care. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye. And with that, we are now presenting Joe. Joe, take it away.
Good morning, thank you. St. James, the Minnesota Extension Horizon program started in 2010, and that was the first time that we were able to bring the two communities, the Anglo and Hispanic community, together to find out what type of concerns we could have that are common, that we could work on. And we found that everybody had the same common goals. They wanted good health care. They wanted an excellent school system that addressed the needs of all students. And they wanted a safe and caring community environment. Since the Horizon program, the school district has elected a Latinx woman member to the school board. We've had a couple of businesses that have been opened by the Hispanic community, and the number of Hispanic students in our school district have reached the point where they are now the majority of the students in our school district, and the Anglos are the minority in the school district. In 2017, a group of winers, at least that's what they called themselves because they enjoyed having a glass of wine as they discussed national issues or events of the day or the week and how those impact our community. They decided to team up with the local La Convivencia Hispana group, and that is a group of individuals that started as employees of Smithfield Foods that wanted to raise money for scholarships for the Hispanic students in our school district so that they could be better educated than their parents. And also, the effort was we have issues. We have racism, as Gary indicated earlier. How can we address those issues, and how can we work together to address those issues? It's an activist group. It's still in its infancy, started in 2017. Their first project was to hold a multicultural fiesta to celebrate diversity within the community. And funds were raised, and the event was held in less than 6 months. And anyone that has ever been involved in any type of fiesta or fundraiser knows that it takes a good year to plan everything if you're going to do it right. And they did it in less than 6 months, and it went very well. We've held the multicultural fiestas in 17, 18, and 19. Hopefully they'll be back again in 2021. Other projects that the Multicultural Unity has was the publication of the book that Gary indicated. Great insight in regards to the fact that we have a diverse community. It's not just made up of two races, two nationalities, and that all of us have pride in our historic backgrounds. They also did what was called community conversations. And they asked people with different nationalities to come forward and talk about the experiences they've had and the fact that we have had issues dealing with the Irish, the Catholics, the Lutherans, and that we need to continue to work together to address those issues and find out that there's a lot of commonality in our community. And we've taken those conversations, we've videotaped them, and also shown them on our public access channel. Everybody enjoys food. So we've done some cultures through cuisines in 2017 and 2018. And this was an opportunity for various churches to host events where ethnic food was being served, and then some history and background of that culture was presented after the meals were held. One of the neatest programs we've established is the Golden Age Club. And that is an evening program for Hispanic senior citizens that meet on a regular basis. They play games. They obtain educational materials from Extension regarding healthy eating. They work with Wellspring, which is an advocate group that works with seniors in the community. And we've had senior citizens in that group that have indicated that they've lived in the community for 20 years, and this is the first time that anybody has reached out to them to see how they're doing, to indicate that there is care in the community in regards to how they're being treated and how we can make their lives better. All of these programs that we've done through Uniting Cultures have been funded through a lot of organizations. Gary mentioned the majority of them. One of the neatest things was the Southwest Minnesota Housing Partnership with their Art Place grant. Not only do we have a community plaza, but we have a community mural. And we established a small home fix-up program and given some opportunities for people in the community that need just that little extra nudge to keep their house in good repair. It's great that we've got these programs, they're loan programs, because they were established by input from the community, input from the Convincia, input from Uniting Cultures. As I indicated, everything is in its infancy. We're trying to build a good foundation. Our local Rotary Club on a monthly basis is discussing the book White Fragility, and Community Ed is now working with Braver Angels, and we hope to have some conversations with them. As a community, we have issues that need to be addressed. We realize that there are needs, and we have citizens that are concerned about their neighbors and willing to address those needs. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joe. I have to mention something in terms of Uniting Cultures and the St. James. We call them the St. James group because there's so many good things happening in St. James that they have their own title at our commission. Uniting Cultures has become the driving force for change and bridging the communities. But Uniting Cultures came, they're the alumni of our Welcoming Communities project, which is a collaborative effort with the Mankato Diversity Council, University of Minnesota Extension Program, and Region 9. And that goes to show that investing in our community is worth it. Investing in the community is worth it. It's worth because it drives not only the community development itself, but it drives the economic development, which is what we all here do for a living, right? I'm gonna toss it back to Dawn.
All right, we have about 15 minutes left in this part of our summit. And so I would like to open the floor up to any questions from participants for both Joe and Gary.
And Christian.
And Christian, yeah.
Don, both Joe and Gary, thank you for your presentations. And you mentioned that there are representatives now on school board. I think there was a city council. You might have mentioned that there were BIPOC community members or, and I'm just wondering, has anyone checked in with those folks because we've done the same in our region, those sorts of changes are happening. Has anyone checked in with them to ask them how it's going and if they feel as if they're being tokenized in any way, shape, or form, or if their ideas are genuinely being considered in part of policy change and community change? Or did we check a box in some of these communities and tokenize folks, which does not shift?
We check with them on a regular basis. We meet on a regular basis. There's no question. We don't just, like some say, yeah, you'll listen to us, but you won't really hear us. We hear them, and then we listen to and go forward. Saudi is on our Park and Rec board, and Louisa, I think, served 6 or 8 years, Joe, I believe, 2 terms on the school board. We visit with them on a regular basis, daily. Hell, I'm up and down the street all the time visiting with them and talking to them and making sure they have, we answer their questions. When we give community updates, we have our city utility application in English and in Spanish. Like we give community updates. I think the last one I gave was probably 30 days ago. So Saudi helps us. We give it in, I give it in English because my Marjorie, my Espanol is muy mal. My Spanish is not very good. Anyhow, so after the presentation English, Saudi, or we have a Hispanic representative that'll give it to everyone in Spanish as well. And it goes onto YouTube and Facebook. And yes, it's on our community website. It's available Spanish and English, both. Yes, we take it sincere, we take it genuine, and we just don't take it for granted. That would not be fair. Joe?
Uniting Cultures, the minutes are all and agendas are all done in English and Spanish. There are times when we don't have the Hispanic community at the meeting. So rather than going ahead and making decisions, we table that item because we want their input. And we make sure that if it's only 1 or 2 of them there, we'll ask them, do you think we need to get Marta's input also on this topic? And we have developed such a trust level that people open up and they're willing to share their frustrations, concerns, because they know that it's not something that's just going to be brushed under the table. So it's also developing that trust level. And it took time. It wasn't something that was done after the first or second meeting. And some real in-depth relationships have been developed because of these organizations working together.
Thank you, Gary and Joe. Any other questions from the audience?
I am curious, Gary and Joe, how you interacted with the local industry, the larger employers in your area. If you did, how did you bring up these conversations with the employer of these increasingly diverse populations?
I would say that our relationship with a major employer, which in this case is Smithfield Foods, is that they bend over backwards to work with us. We have our school liaison people that meet with the management of Smithfield Foods. They've been allowed to come in and do presentations during the breaks that employees have. They've allowed employees to take time off to attend the parent-teacher conferences that have been held. Anytime that we've got a major project going on where we need funding, they're the first ones stepping up and saying, how much do you need? Or is it a product issue? They help us out with our weekend backpack program to the point of they provide all the crackers for us. They provide the juice for us. A pallet of juice is $5,000. So they put their money where their mouth is, and so to speak, in that they're concerned about their employees and they're willing to show that. They have helped the Hispanic community with its scholarship funding. Matter of fact, they even started an internal scholarship program funded directly by Smithfield Foods because an employee mentioned that to their management and they took it to heart.
Thank you, Joe.
And we meet with the employers, the plant manager, on a regular basis. I personally talk to them on the phone and go out and see them. So we make sure that there's personal contact because that's the best you can get. Not just send them letters or something else. You see them face to face and visit with them and address them and be genuine.
I do have a question if there is still time.
Yes, please.
In regards to Gary, you had talked about one of the 11 priorities of that study was employee training, new employee training. I'm just wondering if that's something that you simply suggested to businesses and or if there was a template that was created by the community that could be shared.
There was not necessarily any kind of template, but the businesses, the employers, mostly for the employers, that presented the orientation, and yes, they are doing that, yes. But we don't have a template, I apologize.
Yeah, thank you for that.
We do have some time yet for questions if there are more questions.
Marjorie and Dawn, if I may give a little context as to how we started, would you mind if I, okay.
Go for it.
So my colleagues, the other executive directors have heard this, so I apologize. But for those of you that I don't know, my name is Nicole, I'm at Region 9. But we had a presentation in 2016 at our commission meeting that extension U of M had just finished about, inequities, and we presented it to the commission and, talked about all the numbers that Christian had discussed, but at the state level. And to fast forward, at the end of that commission meeting, they asked if there were any questions, and that one of the commissioners stood up and Commissioner Sturm, correct me or add in if I miss any details, stood up and said, what are you going to do about it? And I had no idea. And so fast forward, that's when I went to the then executive director of the YWCA. I plopped down in her chair and I said, look, if I go find money, could we bring what you're doing in Mankato for It's Time to Talk and bring it on the road? Because I didn't know where the hell to start otherwise. I was like, no one needs to hear it from me, but I need to get some buy-in from folks who know how to do this. And so that was our first step to just do it. Called Blandon, we want to do this, no problem. Here's some money for the grant. And so we were able to take the It's Time to Talk, what was happening in Mankato, and bring it out to those 5 other communities. And so just for context for the other planners, where you're like, where do we even start with this? For us, that's where we started. And that was, again, to the Commissioner Sturm's point, then in 2017, we then had the RELC program.
And we're very fortunate for Nicole's expertise in going forward and getting it all together. We're as part of, I said in Region 9 as well, and for our whole Region 9, we're blessed to have Nicole, and that's the truth.
I also did want to share, Cheryl and I were on the same wavelength as Robin and Gary were talking. DEED has, well, it's actually through Minnesota SEP, I believe, but Chad Bodine, as the DEED representative, runs the program, but they have an inclusive workforce employer program going on where employers can partner with Minnesota SEP, and there's a 4-step process that employers can go through to being designated as an inclusive workforce employer. And so, you know, it's doing an assessment to kind of see where your group is at in terms of equity and inclusion, and incorporating some trainings and things within, and then there are a few other steps, but I'm trying to find that link. I'll be sure to share that link with this group in the notes after today so that you all have access to that. I know that it was piloted up in northwestern Minnesota originally and has just now come into a couple more regions in central Minnesota. So I'm not sure if it's statewide quite yet, but I can absolutely answer that for you all as well. And we have about 4 more minutes for questions if anyone has any more. Otherwise, we can always break early if
Any questions for Christian?
I have a general question about St. James. I'm wondering if all the work that's been done in that community is translated into economic gains in the community, or is there sort of striations or levels of economic prosperity in the community?
It absolutely has economic gains because it allows more people to have work, employment, to stay here, raise their families. It's good for our school. It's good for our businesses. It's good for the community. It's good for everyone. Yes, absolutely. It's beneficial. And we're going to continue to work on it for that reason. It's important. It's just an integral part of the future of St. James, Minnesota, and every other community.
I have a question, if I might ask one. What have you done with childcare providers and early childhood programs to incorporate this work into their work? Just because in early childhood is when children start, learning about the world, and we want to start as early as possible. So I was wondering what you've done with the early childhood programs in your communities.
Joe, you want to address that?
I guess I would say that the community ed director is also in charge of the major daycare facility in our community. So as far as specifics go, I guess I would have to relate to her in regards to just exactly what she's doing. We have established some programs to get people properly trained and licensed in daycare areas, and we are encouraging our Hispanic community to be involved in that. We have a strong ESL program. And again, everything that we're doing is still in its infancy. Appreciate your question, and I think that's something we'll pass on to Sue and see what I get for a reaction. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we have time for one more question, and Sean from Region 9 has his hand up.
Hi, Mayor. Sean Foster from Region 9. I'm looking through the cases of COVID by county, and I'm wondering, how's your county faring? Because I can see that Waukegan County is actually doing extremely well when you look at the surrounding case numbers in the other counties. But you have one of the largest demographic representations in that area. Your largest employer is a food manufacturer, and it's known by the state that communities of color have a significant health disparity, and COVID hitting their communities harder than any other. Do you feel that the work and effort that you've done to bring equity, equality, and into your community has had an effect on bringing and keeping that number low?
Did you guys catch all of Sean's questions? Sean, you were a little bit hard to hear, so maybe could you type the exact question into the chat?
Yes, sir.
We got some of it. The food industry, COVID impacts women in right?
Can you hear me better now?
Try it again, yeah.
Okay. So, Megan, I'm wondering how the county is faring when it comes to COVID, given the demographics of your community, that your food manufacturing is one of the largest employers in your area. And what I'm noticing as I'm looking in the surrounding counties is that Watonwan County is actually doing very well. And I'm wondering if this is in part to the work that you're bringing into the community.
Smithfield is putting a $1 million addition on the front of their building for safety, for testing, for eventually for a break room. So they are spending $1 million in St. James, Minnesota to ensure the safety of their employers. They put up, they wear face masks, they wear their plastic shield, they put the fiberglass up in between to ensure their safety. I visited with personally with not necessarily plant manager, but a couple of people up on with Smithfield, said they're taking this serious and they're doing the best they can for COVID. They test them coming and they test them at noon, they test them leaving to make sure they don't have a temperature before they enter into the building. Absolutely. They take this 100% serious. They have about 500 employees here in St. James, which, our population is, last census was 4695. Now we asked people to come in from the city from the east because MnDOT didn't change the sign, it says 4695. So there's more population there.
Do you think some of that success relates back to your work on DEI in your community? Not just Smithfield Foods? Because oftentimes the food industry has been able to solve it there, but it's community spread. And that's what I'm trying to get at.
I believe, yes, it is. Wouldn't you say, Joe?
Yes, I think our school district is making a real concerted effort to address those issues at a good foundation of educational level of start at the elementary school or preschool.
All right, well, thank you to our panelists. Thank you to all of you for asking great questions. We are now to a point of a break within our session, and when we come back, we are going to have a little bit of fun. So we'll get to engage with each other a little bit more. I see Nicole has a question before we break. No? Oh, okay, I saw your hand raised. Oh, you were just giving a wave, like, woohoo! All right. All right, well, come back in about 10 minutes at about 10:40, and we will continue. Thank you all.
Thank you. Have a great day, everyone.
Yes, thank you, Gary and Joe.
The clap. I was trying to do the clap, not hand. Thank you, Gary.
You're welcome.
In case you were wondering, the ones that stayed, you're free to turn off your camera and do whatever you need to do until we resume back at 10:40. Just don't leave the chat per se. Thank you so much.
It's like,
See, everyone is starting to make their way back. We'll get started here again in a couple minutes as soon as I see more faces.
Jay, you want to sing us a little ditty while we're waiting?
Ah. Why would I be the one to sing you a ditty, Cheryl?
You just look like you were ready to break out in song there.
Joel, have all of the ads finally stopped in your email from Georgia?
Yeah, my emails and texts are suddenly much more manageable.
I'm going to give folks just a couple more seconds here to pop back on, and then we can get going with our small group activity.
While we wait for everyone, I'm just gonna share a little video here. Let's see.
I told my mom, tears rushing down my face. She's like, Ben, you've loved girls since before pre-K. Tripping. Yeah, I guess she had a point, didn't she? Bunch of stereotypes all in my head. I remember doing the math, like, yeah, I'm good at Little League. A preconceived idea of what it all meant. But those that like the same sex have the characteristics. The right-wing conservatives think it's a decision. And you can be cured with some treatment and religion. Man-made rewiring of a predisposition, playing God. Oh nah, here we go. America the brave still fears what we don't know. And God loves all his children. It's somehow forgotten, but we paraphrase a book written 3,500 years ago. I don't know.
And I can't change, even if I tried, even if I wanted to. And I can't change, even if I tried.
I was gay, I would think hip-hop hates me.
Get going now. What I'm going to do, folks, is I know we haven't been able to watch all of these videos that Marjorie has shared, but I will include links of all of those in the notes that I send out if you're interested in hearing more of those songs and seeing those videos that are being shared. So now we get to do a fun little group activity or small group activity. I had learned about this icebreaker, if you will, from Sangeeta, who is a professor at St. Cloud State University. And when we're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, I think it's always an important place to start by trying to find commonality. And something that we all have in common is that we have a name. We all are named something. But where our differences come into play is maybe how we are named or who named us. What does our name mean? And so what I'm going to have to do, or I'm going to ask you to do, is in your small groups, I'm going to break you out into groups of about 4 people each. And within your group, please introduce yourself, share your name, share how you got your name. Did somebody name you it? Are you named after it? You know, how did your name come to be? What does your name mean, if you happen to know that? And then, have you had any reactions or any comments or, you know, things that have happened to you around what your name is? Like, for example, my name is Dawn. I can't tell you how many times I've heard break of day or crack of dawn or, you know, funny jokes like that, you know. So we all might, not all of us, but some of us do have some stories like that about your name that also is important to who you are. So please take some time in these groups. We're going to give you, let's see, we'll give you about 15 minutes or so to introduce and to share your name and the meaning of that. And then we'll all come back together and just, if any of you, when you're in your groups, decide that you want to share with the big group, I would love to have a few of you come back and share with the big group as well. But what this project does is it just shows that we all have a commonality and we all have a difference around something as simple as our name, and it helps to tell our story.
I'm gonna ask for
Yes,
all of
please.
us, I know while we have the presenters, we can turn off our cameras. But if we're in a group dynamic, I am going to ask all of you to turn on your cameras and face each other and get to know each other and see each other's expressions, because it's this is all part of getting together one's differences.
Love it, Marjorie. Yeah, if you do have the capability, please turn on your camera for this part so you can get to know each other better. All right, so a pop-up will come up that'll invite you into a breakout room. So click on that when it comes and we'll see y'all back here in about 15 minutes. Welcome back.
We're back.
Hello.
My mouse down here.
Everybody's coming back. Did you guys have enough time? Okay. Chad is kind of maybe a little bit.
Hi, y'all.
Everybody's making their way back. We're getting there. 23, 24, 25. We have almost 50 participants, you guys, so that's pretty fantastic. Representing, I think, all but one of the RDOs in the state, so we had a really good show. All right, I think you are all back now. Yep, 43 participants. So, how was that? Was that fun? You guys like that activity? Does anybody want to share with the group their name? Something about their name?
I'm always called Melissa.
And what's your name? Where I can't see.
Michelle. It's Michelle Moratsky. Yeah, supposedly, I don't know, but I apparently always get called Melissa. Yeah, it's kind of turned into a running gag. And my high school name was Shelley. So now the only people who call that are my parents, my sister, and now my son-in-law. As he found out. So
of course.
That's hilarious, Michelle, because I was just working on something earlier this morning and I was typing your name and I started to type Melissa.
Oh, that's interesting.
Well, and when I spell Shelley, it's drop the M-I and add a Y. So that's unique itself too. So there we go.
We did have a Melissa in our group. Where's Missy?
I see her there. Yep, she's right next to you.
Here. Yeah, my real name is Melissa, and I was telling our group, my mom loved that name when I was little, so she called me Melissa, but she was terrified that people would call me Missy, and she did not want that at all. Well, ever since I've been little, everyone's always called me Missy, and she kind of grew on it and called me Missy too, but she did not want me to be called Missy. My original name is Melissa.
I had a police officer in a training once call me Missy, and I thought he was being like, hey, little Missy. Like, no, he literally thought my name was Melissa and was calling me Missy.
Oh, that's awesome.
Well, I'll go and I'll just say that my name is Karen, and I get a lot of flack for that. I can't understand it. I don't know what happened in 2020 or 2019, but
we don't either.
It's just been a real bad. No, geez, you know, I don't know. I don't think I'm a whiner. Well, I am kind of whining, am I not?
I am so sorry,
I wasn't
Karen.
named after anybody.
We're just gonna skip. We're just gonna skip 2020. Forget about that one.
Well, it's constantly something going on where somebody did something and so they're a Karen, and it's just looking forward to the male counterpart to that name. You know, we need like an Eric or something, because
Darren.
it's
Karens
not right.
and Darrens.
Oh, okay, well, all right, there you go. But like I said, I wasn't named after anybody, but my middle name is Jane after my mother. So yeah, that's all I got.
I do think that's very interesting, Karen, that you point that out, because before 2020 came, Karen was just another name, right? And in how much one person's actions can change life for everybody named Karen really quickly. So
Was it? I don't even know if there was a person, or is it just
mad at Target?
There were few Karens who behaved not in a very nice and welcoming way. They were actually called Karen. One of them was at a gas station. The other one was at a Target, I believe.
Yeah.
The other one was at a park. So historically, with 2020, Karens are not. But you know, like I said, we're just skipping 2020. We are putting our best foot forward from today on.
The new year. Yeah, but thank you all for doing that and for sharing your names and a little bit about yourselves with each other. That just
Anyone
helps.
else?
Oh, do we want one more?
I
We
saw
have
someone that kind of
somebody
wanted to
raised
share
their hand?
something. Or is it everyone's moving that I'm like going?
Maybe,
yeah,
yeah,
okay.
maybe.
You know, I appreciate Michelle sharing that because I have that similar thing where everyone calls me Scott, and that's not either one of my names. But traditionally, if I'm called the wrong name, it's going to be Scott. I don't know why.
Interesting.
Lou, do you want to comment on any reasoning?
Well, there might be a reason because when he started, I kept calling him Scott. I don't know why. And I did it in a staff development training over a 2-day period. I kept calling him Scott. It just continued. We did have an employee previous to him who was named Scott, not doing the same type of work. I don't know. I have no idea why, but it slipped one day and it just, I still do it sometimes, not on purpose, but and now Sean calls himself Scott from time to time. So,
but Lou, I'm not. What I found was it started with you, but now my work is taking me into multiple communities with people I don't know, and that's the first name that they come to. And so that's what I find it really interesting. Like I said, if I'm going to be called the wrong name, it's Scott, and it's not just you. It's by all sorts of people. So apparently that's supposed to be my name.
You've just never appreciated how far my power goes out.
That could be. Your influence is really remarkable.
This story does actually segue us very nicely into the next section about finding a common language and being on the same page with meanings and identities, I guess. And so I am going to turn it over to Marjorie to share a little bit about finding that common language amongst ourselves.
Yay, that's me. If you don't know by now, I'm Marjorie. But at Starbucks, the most creative way I've been called is malaklakla. I don't know where it came from, but I have it still in a cup. I saved that cup. We're gonna talk about language. How many of you speak another language aside from English? I have 1, I have 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, 7. I counted you, Jason. I believe Corey as well. 8. I am 9.
Does reading count, not speaking?
Yes, that counts.
Okay.
I was gonna say, I feel I can read
I get like a
better than I can
0.5
speak.
for reading. Yeah.
That's what I was gonna say. I'm like a half, I think.
Out of 43 participants, we have 11 that speak, read, write another language. And that is amazing. First, kudos to all of us, because I am included in that group. But and I think we can keep on improving those skills as we go. But the coolest thing about knowing another language is that you put the effort into finding that commonality with your own language. That is the case with Germanic and Romance languages. If you speak English and you are learning German, there are commonalities in the languages, right? If you speak Spanish and you're going to learn Portuguese, Italian, Romanian, Catalan, French, there are so many languages because of the root of that, your native language. And so you can almost understand. But the problem is when we get lost in translation, and getting lost in translation can get us in trouble. How many of you have traveled outside of the US? I believe everyone has. Have any of you with profanity, says Cheryl. That counts, Cheryl. That counts. That can also get you in trouble. And how many of you have felt lost in translation when you visit another country? That is also a commonality. So you see where I'm going with this. if we're working with communities and if we're working in economic development projects, we need to have and find a common language to create that bridge between the two. Because as we have, at least in Region 9, we have spoken about this so many times. One is tied to the other. Economic and community development go hand in hand. They're not two separate things. And so is DEI. DEI, it shouldn't be a separate lens where you put your projects through. It should be the main lens where you filter all your projects, because after all, DEI is everything that you see in this screen right now. If you take a look at the screen, whether we're white, we're black, we're Latino, we're Asian, whatever we have here in the screen, we have a diverse group of members. And if you realize that just a slight adjustment of your way of thinking, not only internally, but how you approach projects, that can change the future of not only the community that you work with and your nucleus, your family, and the community you work with, but little by little, we're shaping the state and we're shaping the nation as well. And I would love for us to be the example on how to shape the nation and make DEI the main lens and not some separate filter. Do we agree on that? Hands. I see that dynamic. Yeah. I'm gonna call us the Do Good Brady Bunch. So I'm gonna share a screen right now, and I hold on. Where is I missed it. Where is it? Ah, here I am. Share screen. So let's have a common language. If I'm trying to move my slides, but I am not able to. What is that? I apologize, folks. This is live television.
Marjorie, it looks like that might just be a.
No. Is the ribbon is hidden. So we go and play. There we go. And here we go. These definitions, I gathered them from the Deanship of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion of the University of Washington. And I picked those because I saw them the most concise and short answer. In this type of work, there's no short answer to anything. And it is an ever evolving topic. So these are pretty nice to what you can find out there. And it can be confusing, it can be overwhelming, it can be stressful, it can be uncomfortable. So the least I want to do is for you to remove yourselves from the session rather than engage into the session. So let's go into here. Diversity, and let's make this interactive. Socially, it refers to the wide range of identities. A broad includes race, ethnicity, gender, age, national origin, religion, disability, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, education, marital status, language, veteran status, physical appearance, etc. It also involves different ideas, perspectives, and values. If you listen to the songs, the first one was Imagine, and the second one was I forgot the title, but it's by Macklemore. And it talks about LGBTQ love and how it's no different than straight hetero love. And oftentimes we think of diversity as race and ethnicity or gender, but then we forget sexual orientation or socioeconomics or religion or even veteran status. Our veterans are often in the back end of diversity when we think about it, about the word. So when you see diversity, think of this screen precisely. This screen, I'm gonna ask the question again and see if I can see you all. I got the equity one right now, but I wanna see how many of you are veterans? There we go. 1, 2, 3. Did you ever think of them as part of diversity because they're white male? You can open up your mics. We're gonna have an exchange. You can open up your mics. Have you ever honestly considered veterans part of diversity?
That's one, for me, I did not for a long time, and had to learn that one, and appreciate that, the different perspective that veterans bring to the workplace and community. And of course, with all of this, I'm still learning it, but did not, just I'll acknowledge it and admit that I did not appreciate that as something that I needed to consider as an aspect of diversity.
So with that, thank you, Sam, for that, because now we see that when we're creating projects, when we're drafting out our plans for shaping our community, we might miss someone, we might miss a group. And it is okay kind of missing it because you don't know everything, but it is not okay once you know it to actually miss it on purpose because you don't want to cater to that. So if you've missed it in the past, there's some sort of, you get one free pass because you didn't know about it. But now that you know about it and you don't go about your projects, including these groups and everyone that entails diversity, then I have to tell you, my friends, the responsibility relies on all of us, the ones that are in the screen, to make sure that that does not happen. So with diversity, which is what we have in this gallery, all types of diverse population that comprises Minnesota, we have equity, the fair treatment, access, opportunity, and advancement for all people, while at the same time striving to identify and eliminate barriers that have prevented the full participation of some groups. The principle of equity acknowledges that there are historical, underserved, and underrepresented populations, and the fairness regarding these unbalanced conditions is needed to assist in the provision of adequate opportunities to all groups. So it's not, the importance of this is not only recognizing that we have a diverse group of people, but that all of us have a fair access and a just access to all the services that are provided, especially by our commissions and offices. So it's not only acknowledging that we have members of diversity working with us and we are catering to certain group, but it's also providing that accessibility and fair representation. So when you think about giving and like Ivan said, accurate representation, when you're thinking about hiring someone or catering someone's project, drafting out a plan for a certain community, just think about their backgrounds and not everything of a statistic point of view. I know we're very much numbers people, but start asking, why are these numbers representing this this population, and where are those gaps that we need to bridge? Because that's, after all, that's what we do. We're bridging, we're liaisons. Okay.
Marjorie, if I may interject, Rick asked a pertinent question in terms of yesterday's actions on the Capitol. Do the protesters represent diversity? And I do think it's important to recognize that according to this definition, it does represent those actions and those values that were portrayed by the protesters does represent diversity of perspectives in this nation. Yes. We can certainly argue that we may disagree with those values, those perspectives, but certainly are representations of diverse perspectives, whether they're held by a majority or a minority. I think from like an economic development standpoint, it's important that we understand why groups that we may perceive not to be marginalized feel like they are so marginalized, because there's obviously a sentiment among folks throughout the nation that they have been marginalized, that there's someone who stands up for their rights, whether right or wrong. And I do think you're making a good point here, Marjorie, in terms of talking about what is that fair treatment, because I do also think we might have witnessed inequities in terms of how they were treated versus other folks who have marched on the Capitol in the past. So
Thank you for mentioning
not to
that.
dismiss, yeah, not to dismiss that they represent diversity, but they may have, and I'm no expert on this, but kind of what media is portraying today are there inequities in how their perspectives, values, and actions were handled by law enforcement and by the Capitol. So I just thought it was a really good question by Rick.
Thank you. I can't see the questions because I have a full screen to show you guys. So if there are any questions, Christian and Dawn, please. But thank you for bringing that up.
I'd just like to jump in and follow up with Christian. I do have close ties to Minneapolis and spent most of my life there. And it really crushed me to see what was going on in the city. I know most of us are representing rural areas now, but the line that I draw is, I read Hillbilly Elegy. If you've read that, I believe that explains a lot. But the line that I do draw based on yesterday and the marches in Minneapolis, there are people that anarchists and destructive people that hide behind diversity. And this is an example where yesterday, the people that broke into the Capitol they're criminals, okay? And they're not representing diversity, in my opinion. They took it too far. And the same thing happened in Minneapolis, where people who hid behind the Black Lives Matter banner and marched for diversity took action in their own hands and burned down the 3rd precinct and other properties around there. Those people aren't representing diversity. They're criminals. And ironically, that's one of the challenges we have today is, how do you tell one from the other?
Well, Rick, to that and to Christian's point, what we saw in Capitol Hill, yes, it is a diverse group, a group that represents diversity in the sense of their beliefs and what they stand for. What is not acceptable in no way, shape, or form is to accept as something that it just happened. Oh, well, they didn't do that with them. That authorities did not pursue these people as well as they did pursue everyone else that marched before them, whether it was Black Lives Matter or gay rights or human rights or anyone that has stepped foot on Capitol Hill. So aside from the fact that it is a diversity group, what is not just and it is not equitable is the way they were treated in a preferential way. If things were the way they should be, these people should have been arrested. That is a very extensive topic that we can get on for hours, and I am up for creating another of these, but it is something that it is very important for us to understand. And because most of us are, well, I think all of us are in government, we need to understand that equity starts at home. So what it is fair to some, it is fair to others. What it is unfair to some, it is unfair to others. The way they were treated, it is unfair to all of the other groups that have marched and even engaged into some behavior that it's very polarizing. People might think that it was okay. People might think that it wasn't okay, their behavior. But what it is not okay, it is the way they were given another free pass. So with that being said, we're going to move from equity, which this explains it very well, to our next term, inclusion. The act of creating environments in which any individual or group can be and feel welcome, respected, supported, and valued as full participating member. An inclusive and welcoming climate embraces differences and offers respect in words and actions for all people. What it is inclusion, and I saw it in a quote that I'm going to share at the end of the presentation. Inclusion is nothing more than diversity is everyone being at the party, right? We're all at the party. Equity is the accessibility to the party. Inclusion is nothing more than being asked to dance. So if you think about it, in our communities, we need to be the good partners and ask our other community members to dance. And how do we do that? Drafting out these plans that include everyone, that you think if it takes you longer in this process of learning what diversity, equity, and inclusion is, if it takes you longer, so be it. Take your time and process and go through those filters and think, oh, am I forgetting this other member of diversity? Am I forgetting this other group in our communities? It'll come as second nature once you learn it. And this is, once again, I want to stress this. This is by no means one class and let's go. This is an ever evolving process. We're always learning about what diversity, equity, and inclusion means, and especially to our communities, because our communities are shaped in a very different way than others. And DEI in rural Minnesota is very different than DEI in the Twin Cities. I want to stress that as well. We are all at a different place in the spectrum of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And once we understand that, we're going to put our best foot forward and be conscious and mindful and purposeful every time we think about diversity. How can I be equitable, and who do I invite to dance? So with that, I'll say, let's be a good partner. Intersectionality, a social construct that recognizes the fluid diversity of identities that a person can hold, such as gender, race, class, religion, professional status, marital status, socioeconomic status. So earlier, Ivana talked about boxes, right? And although checking boxes for the mere fact of checking the boxes is not a good practice, you have to also take in consideration there's a woman, lower socioeconomic status, from Somali background, that has no access to education. So how can we support that person? This person has that intersectionality happening. So she's not only a member of one spectrum of the diversity, she's a member of 4 spectrum of the diversity. And if we add that she might be Muslim or Catholic or Protestant or Buddhist or whichever religion she practices. So those are things that we need to take in account when we recognize intersectionality, as well when we practice intersectionality. And practicing intersectionality in our commissions is nothing more than creating bridges among those projects. If you're working in a clean energy project and working in transportation and education project, how can they all connect to better serve all the communities? So that's also an intersectionality within our organizations. So I think the key to intersectionality is collaboration. I hear someone open their mics.
I did, Marjorie. I was just going to say that one of the very first lessons I learned a few years back through someone who works in the field was that one of the biggest issues we had in the Mankato area was people not understanding the difference between equal and equitable, and that is the first lesson everybody has to learn first. Equal does not mean it's equitable. And one of the contexts that was explained in is as like, if you have an employment opportunity and you put the posting out there, is it in a language everybody can read? It's not an equal opportunity if people who can't read English can't read that job posting, or similar things. And I think that was the first big eye opener for me. And it's been several years since then, but when it was introduced to me, I didn't appreciate fully how that went. And I think it's a really good starting point for people to look back and, okay, does this work for so-and-so? Is this going to bring them out? And I just thought that was one of the best lessons I had gotten.
Thank you, Lou. That is right. Are we on the same page with equality and equity? Show of
Can I
hands.
share one story, Marjorie, quick? I
Yes,
know
ma'am.
our time, we're probably not gonna be able to play our trivia game, you guys. But I think this is all really important conversation. I just was I was watching the Drew Barrymore show last week. And she had Michael Strahan, the former NFL player. And he was telling a story. They were talking about how hard work pays off. And all we need to do is work hard. And being in this equity work and thinking about equity. And Michael shared a story about how when he was a child, he was very much brought up on the idea of hard work pays off. And there was a bike or something that he wanted. And his dad just wouldn't outright buy it for him. And so his point of the story was that he then got a job delivering papers. And his dad told him that if he earned half the money, that he would, they could get the bike then. And so Michael got his paper job. He earned half the money. He worked really hard. He put a lot of effort into it to earn that half of the money. He got his bike with the help of his father. When I heard that story, what kind of rang in my mind was, not everyone has that ability. Just because Michael worked hard wasn't why he got that bike. Michael also got that bike because he had a father that was at home. Michael had got that bike because his father could afford to put the other half of the dollars in. I mean, there's all these things in play. So when you are thinking about equality versus equity, not everyone who works their tail off can still succeed the same way. And so just be thinking about that as well when you're considering the different population groups within your communities and region.
And that is a great segue to the next definition. Structural inequalities, systemic disadvantages of one social group compared to other groups rooted and perpetuated through discriminatory practices, conscious or unconscious, that are reinforced through institutions, ideologies, representations, policies, laws, and practices. When this kind of inequalities is related to racial, ethnic discrimination, is referred to as systemic or structural racism. And that is something that is very important to our line of work, because there have been laws and policies put in place that prevents us from oftentimes making that equitable work. Thinking of how we can change policies, we can draft out plans to be able to change policies. That's going into the step forward to eliminating that systemic oppression and not enforcing it ourselves. For instance, there's correct me if I'm wrong with terms, I apologize, the red line on housing. So that red line prevented African Americans to move into certain neighborhoods and purchase homes into certain neighborhoods and get mortgage loans for their homes. And their mortgage loans were at rates much higher than of those of white folks. So if we know that that is still a law and a policy that is still going on in our communities, how, and I asked this question to our executive directors that are here, how can we prevent from falling into that policy and into that law? How can we prevent and actually make the changes necessary so everyone can have affordable and proper housing in the neighborhood that they please to be in? How can we break that?
Was that an open question to the whole group?
Yes, that is.
I have one thing that I would like to offer is that I think the structure that we have as far as opportunities for leaders in our communities, I was on the city council for 5 years in my small town, and it's a big not responsibility, but a commitment in that if you're trying to work a full-time job besides, and I was Signal, I didn't have a family. So how many people younger than, if they're not retired, have the opportunity and the time to actually serve on the school board or the city council or wherever it is. Could barely do it as a single white male with all the privilege that comes with that. So there's a problem there, in my opinion, is that those opportunities just really realistically aren't open for people. I think you can say that everybody can run and everybody has the opportunity to do it, but that's not the reality. The reality is that very few people have the time to be able to do it, or maybe even the understanding to be able to do it. And I think that's something that we could do a better job of, just creating real opportunities for people who don't normally have them to sit in positions of leadership in our communities.
Good, I like that. And that takes us to our next set of definitions. Bias, a form of prejudice that results from our tendency and needs to classify individuals into categories. And I want to address this into a question, and I want everyone to turn on their cameras because I want to see everyone right now when we ask this. Let me wait. Here's Lee, Sam, Sean, Missy, Sue, Terry, Ashley, Brianna. Okay. How many of you think that your biases, that you have biases? Show of hands. Keep your hands up so I can cross the. Well, good, because we all do. Biases, fortunately or unfortunately, they come with the way we're brought up, with our experiences, with our education. I wish we didn't have biases, but whether they're good or bad, whether you want to classify them yourself as good or bad, but we all do have biases. It's a matter of understanding where these experiences that conform the us that it is right now sitting at this training affect someone else, where these biases play into shaping someone else's lives. So we have to be very careful to call each other the holier than thou, because no one in this training is. Everyone has biases and prejudice and has at some point discriminated against another person. It comes with all the information that we have been gathering through the way we're raised, through education, through the access of education, through media, through our travel experiences, through the socioeconomics that and religious beliefs that conforms us. So one of the things that we need to do as individuals, and then as part of a group that shapes actually communities, is understanding our very own, accepting them, and in a more personal level, work on them. So if there is not good use on basically punishing yourself because of having a bias, but there is good use of learning where it comes from and correcting it. And that's the whole point of acknowledging what bias is. Systemic oppression, we talked about that one. I apologize, I kind of doubled it. Prejudice, an inclination or preference, especially one that interferes with impartial judgment and can be rooted in stereotypes that deny the right of individual members of certain groups to be recognized and treated as individuals with individual characteristics. And even if in one of the marketing examples gave one that is very good, the pajama marketing ad. So here's the white family all together, mom, dad, and the kids. And then there's this African American family, mom and kids. And whomever did the campaign, you can tell that person's biases and prejudice pushing forward because they stereotyped the community. If you go, I sent you guys the link to Procter & Gamble's videos. They have a video that's called The Look, and I suggest that everyone looks at it because it will make you understand in a better way how we typically tend to stereotype for just by the look of things, by how we look, and we could actually make the exercise right now. And if we ask Cheryl to give her first impression of Robin, what it was, and has it changed after the interaction? So it's a mere thought of moving forward what's in front and pushing past. And yes, sometimes it takes time and real effort to hold it after you get to know. So it's a good practice, and especially it has happened when it comes to, and I think Lou, you can speak on this particular, but it has happened historically with our banking system. A lot of banks would look at certain people and not give it a loan or give it a fair treatment just because of the way they look, or if they were African American or Latino or disabled, thinking that they could not repay. How do they know they cannot repay a loan? So that's prejudice. Also, in the case of education, prejudice is also not catering to your community just because there's one person that needs the service. For example, in education, offering ESL as an option to the students that are attending, just because there's only one student that speaks Chinese or Spanish or French, and they're not going to have an equitable chance for an education. So we're playing on our prejudice, and we're linking it to systemic oppression. You see how all the terms are related? Nothing is something separate, and how everything affects all these terms are not mere terms into a presentation. It's how we think. It's the process we're thinking. And privilege. And I think, yes.
Okay. I wanted to just see if we would have time, if we can cut any of this, just so we can see the video, because the video does such a good job kind of explaining it and just to shake it up. But I'm throwing something at you, so I'm not trying to get us too far off the agenda, but I think the video does a really good job versus like the definitions per se, in my opinion. But
I could share the video after we explain the last two terms and the last three terms that are very important as well. And then this takes us to privilege, which is the exclusive access or availability to material and immaterial resources based on the membership to a dominant social group. This is a very touchy term, especially in the group that we have. If you see, there's when it comes to race and ethnicity, there's not a broad diversity. And I could ask all of you if you have all gained benefit from being white. And I want to see the show of hands. Have you ever gained benefit just for being white? Have you ever been discriminated or held services or denied entrance or anything for being white?
Marjorie, not because of being, I've been discriminated against, I don't feel, as a result of being white, but certainly gender comes into play there. And there are so many different types of.
I was going there.
Yeah, thank you.
So, so none of the people that are considered white in this forum have ever been discriminated against just because of being white or denied services. Rick,
well, I'm white, but I've been discriminated against because I'm Catholic more than once. More than once.
I'm going there. So,
well, I was going to just quickly say that I was part of a group that, there were many of us that were white, but there was another group of people there that I think discriminated against us because we were white. I'm not going to get into who they were, but I just felt like I was ostracized, or I was separated from the group because I was white and wasn't like them. So it was really a different, odd for me situation.
Karen, can you imagine that times 10 every day?
No, I hated it. I got out of there and wasn't involved in it anymore.
Exactly. So just that one factor influences everything else that we do, because we haven't gotten that type of barrier. And then if you add the fact that you're not white and you're a woman, and you're not white and you're a woman and you're a Muslim in this country, and you're gay, and you're from low socioeconomics, can anyone here attest to that intersectionality? So in some sort of way, everyone that is here is privileged. As long as we recognize that, we can move forward. If we don't recognize that we come from a platform, that we can still do the everyday things, that we can still go to an affordable college and have the means to do so, that we can still get a job, that we can provide for our families. If we can still do that, then we're at a position of privilege. Whether you're discriminated just for one thing or the other, you have to think that you still have the means to do everything else, but there are people that are not. And we, as commissions, we are shaping their world. So sometimes we have to put ourselves aside and think of how we can shape in a better way, in a better light, the shape of the ones that have no voice and have no way to be here, and say, you know what? I check all those boxes, unfortunately. Because I gotta tell you, I've seen it, and that sucks. There's no other way to put it. That is terrible, because there's so much that you want to do. And sometimes the system, and we are the system, as long as we understand that we are the system often puts those barriers. So part of the things that we're doing here is trying to break the system, if you wish, if you wish to put it that way. We are trying to break whomever came before us that put this system in place on purpose to be the gateway of who gets the benefits and who gets the services. We, as part of the system, need to break that gateway and open it up for everyone. So that's important that we recognize it. We all have privilege, myself included.
Marjorie?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm watching the time, and I love this comment. Obviously, it's very rich conversation, but I think we might need to, if we want to just share the rest of these definitions out, maybe we can touch on them on the next session.
Yeah.
Or how you want to. I do want to be respectful of everybody's time.
If we may, I am going to look up for the look video and put it as our ending, the ending to our day. And I wish you stayed just that extra 30 seconds just to watch it, because it's something that explains it very well.
Okay. So Marjorie, how about if I talk about our next steps and our next meeting, and then on the closeout, we'll put that video up, and then when it's over, we can all move on with our days, right? And
yes,
digest
boss.
what we've all learned here today. No, this has been great. We have so much rich content, and the conversation has been so good, and I do appreciate all of that. So this has been, to me, a wonderful first session. I think I learned a lot, and I'm very grateful to have all of you here as well. For our next session, we do have some homework, if you will, nothing intense and terrible, but just to kind of keep us thinking about this and staying on track with what we're learning here today. Like I mentioned, we wanted this to be an in-person thing where we would have, gotten together and done this all in a day or two, but because of COVID, we're having to piecemeal it, but we want to make sure that you guys are able to stay engaged throughout these 4 sessions. And so I'm going to send you all some links when we're done here today. First of all, we were fortunate enough to work with Growth and Justice Region 5 was to put together a Rural Communities Equity Action Guide, and we just recently released that. It's a guide that has case studies actually from all over Greater Minnesota, from our friends in all of our different RDOs, and just sharing different DEI initiatives that folks have done in Greater Minnesota, how they did it, who was involved, and it's a nice guide to help kind of inspire and give communities ideas for what they can do around this work. Also, I'm going to include a link to a TED Talk that I'd like you to watch. It's only about 10 minutes long. It's just about the importance of inclusion. And then finally, at our next session, we're going to be going over the Intercultural Development Inventory Assessment. And so between now and I'll send you a deadline, but you're each going to be receiving an email from IDI. It might look like spam. And this email will instruct you on how to take a 50-question assessment. And what this assessment does is it helps us identify ourselves and our organization as to how we bridge difference. What is our intercultural agility? How do we work across differences, and how can we do that better? And so we'll each take that assessment, and when we come back to our next meeting, we'll go over what those group results were, and then also talk in our different RDO groups about what each RDO's results were as well. And so please make sure to take that assessment by January 29th, and I'll send out reminders and things. And if you don't get the link, let me know, because sometimes it goes into your spam box as well.
Don, it's important to note that those, your profile is confidential. Your individual profile is confidential. So it will be in a group format. So when you answer those questions, answer them about yourself, but no one's going to know.
Correct. Yeah.
Cheryl or Dawn, for like half of my team has already done it. Do you want us to do it again or refer back to what we have? Do it again?
Let's have you do it again. Just because when we present to the group, we're going to compile everybody's, so us as MADO, you know, how are we assessed as an entire group? And then I can also break it down to each RDO. And then those who choose will have an opportunity to meet with myself to receive their one-on-one profile as well. Yes, ma'am. Do we have any questions, comments? Anything else before Marjorie plays us this video? Again, I appreciate you all for being here today. I will send out notes after this, and our next session is on February 4th. And there will be a different Zoom link. So I, Marjorie or Christian will be sure to get that information out to you all as well with the updated link. Thank you all. And Marjorie, if you want to cue up a video.
Okay, rat them out. Whose birthday? Karen's? Happy birthday.
Marjorie, you're on mute.
I am always saying that I'm gonna make that shirt, and today I was the one. This video was part of the efforts of Procter & Gamble for their diversity, equity, and inclusion message. And this particular video came out right after George Floyd's murder. So I'm gonna play this and share my screen first. Share, and here we go. Full screen, and here we go.
Marjorie, is there supposed to be volume? I think you need to share
sharing.
your volume again.
Corey and Heather, can you share what Leah told us last night about the sound thing? Because we had this issue last night on our commission meeting. I was like, we had it all perfect. And then it didn't work, of course. And then one of our guest speakers actually has told us how to fix it.
Yeah, so
got it.
when you're sharing the screen, when you first click in, there's the little bubbles at the bottom that says share your audio.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was, no, I can't, there it is. Now you're supposed to hear it. Yay?
Yes.
All rise.
That's pretty cool, Marjorie. Thanks for sharing that.
Right this moment, there is a mad rush in America.
We're still hearing your computer. All right, folks, thank you so much. It's noon, so let's sign off and continue on with our Thursdays, and we'll see you all back here on February 4th. Watch for that IDI link and the other notes from today's meeting. Appreciate you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Marjorie and Christian, do you want to stay on? Looks like we already lost Christian.
Yeah, I messaged.
I'm gonna hang up these other people.
Bye, guys.
I don't want to remove them. That's okay. I did not want to cut you off, Marjorie. I did not at all.
No worries. Hold on.
Oh, I wanted to copy the chat too. There we go. Save chat.
Okay. We should have 2 participants now.
Me and you, right?
Yeah. Let me get.
Me and you.
Let me call Christian real quick. See if he answers. I have something going on. Hold on a second.
Okay.